That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. Thanks to you for supporting the show. I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we talk about drugs, we talk about alcohol, we talk about trying to stay sober, live a better lifestyle, be healthy, be positive. Good stuff right there. Welcome today. If you're tuning in for the first time, it's great to have you here. I always like to say we're not a platform meant or designed to replace any 12-step program, any professional advice, any programs at that. Really what we're here to do is have some fun, create a platform that is open, honest, and provide some good sharing experiences. And I think I said fun already, but man, that's one of my favorite things is having some fun in recovery. So we got a great guest today for you. I'm really pumped to talk to this man. His name's Teo Alfero, and Teo was born and raised in Argentina, and he came to California in 1999, and his passion for reaching out to young people in need of mentoring, in need of guidance, combined with a unique understanding of the subtle yet powerful teachings of wolves, inspired the creation of Wolf Connection, which is a sanctuary for wolves and wolf dogs north of Los Angeles. Teo's an experienced TedX speaker, and he's now the author of his first book, The Wolf Connection, What Wolves Can Teach Us About Being Human. And like I said, super pumped to talk to him. I actually heard him on a friend of mine's show, Trip Lanier, just a week or two ago, and was so excited to connect. So we're going to get to Teo in just a minute. But first, be sure to check us out at thatsoberguy.com. You can also connect with us on Instagram at RealThatSoberGuy, and on Twitter at Shane Raymer. Now, every year, 23 million Americans are living with addiction, but only 3 million are actually seeking the help that they need. So I want to tell you about Heroes in Recovery. Heroes in Recovery has a simple mission. It's to eliminate the social stigma that keeps people with addiction and mental health issues from seeking the help that they need. They also share stories of recovery for the purpose of encouragement, inspiration, and they help create an engaged, sober community that empowers people to get involved, to give back, to live healthy, active lives, which is so important when you're living in recovery. And I know that from personal experience. Heroes in Recovery is here to break the stigma. And if you have a story, or do you have a story, you can help bring truth and some hope to the spotlight by sharing it with Heroes in Recovery. So if you want to learn more about this, you can go to heroesinrecovery.com/soberguy. That's heroesinrecovery.com/soberguy. Or you can call if you have some questions, you or a loved one needs some help. You can call 833-81-SOBER. That's 833-81-SOBER. And you can get some help, some questions answered, anything that you need there. So let's see here. I think that is all the announcements for today. Nice and short. I like it like that. Teo Alfero, my friend, thank you for taking some time with us today and coming on That Sober Guy, man. How are you?
I'm good, Shane. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it's an honor, man. And I mentioned briefly in the intro, a friend of mine, Trip Lanier, who really helped to inspire me to launch this show. I love when things happen like this. I get his emails every week or every couple of weeks on when he puts new content out. And I see the email come through last week, and it says Teo Alfero, Wolf Connection, and I start looking at. I ended up listening to it, and before that though, the next email was some contact info trying to connect us, which was great. So it's really cool how things like that happen sometimes.
Yeah, that tells you that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. So you came to America, I want to say 1998, 1999, is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And you came from Argentina, and like I said, I listened to a little bit of the podcast with Trip. So I know you came with like $600 in your pocket and a dream to find this author. Maybe take us back to a little bit before that. What drove you to get out of Argentina, to come to America? What did that life look like before you ended up in the States?
Sometimes people travel and relocate, escaping from poor situations. That was not the case for me. I had a good life. I mean, right before coming, I'm a mountaineer and guide in Patagonia, and, the tip of South America. But I always had this itch, this yearning um, for the spiritual side, and I studied and searched, many different traditions. I look into Hinduism and into Buddhism and so on, Celtic. And then eventually came across the writings of Carlos Castaneda, the author that I ended up seeking, and that captivated me to a point that by the time I finished reading his last book, he wrote 12 of them. I had to find him. I had to find him. So really, what brought me to the States was that search. It wasn't any. I mean, my life actually got a little worse for a while. I mean, from being a business owner and living in the mountains in Patagonia, I ended up, finding a job washing cars for $8 an hour. And so I could do my spiritual training. So I would, wash cars from 7 a.m. to 3, and then go home, take a nap, and then study and practice and sit in meditation and from 5 in the afternoon until 3, 4, 5 in the morning. Sleep a couple of hours, go back to work, and that was my life for a few years. So yeah, I mean, I'm a believer that each of us has that yearning inside of us for something, and that yearning is not a voice that will scream in your face. It doesn't come in the form of a piano falling on your head, or sometimes it does in case of addiction.
Yeah.
But it's this subtle whisper that if you don't pay attention to it long enough, that whisper will get quieter and quieter, and eventually will be overshadowed by the noise and the distraction. But there's so much to gain by taking a chance and following that subtle voice that we all have.
So do you think that voice at that time, you're living a pretty decent life, but is it fair to say that you just felt something inside that there was more of this journey, this kind of expedition for you to go on and seek and find?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what your life is about, no matter how much you accomplished or didn't, there is so much more. There is so much more, and so we can jump on that train and try to go all the way and be a seeker and a finder until the day we die. We can decide to get on that train for a little while and then get off on a station that looks pretty good, and there's no harm in that. Sometimes, some of us, for whatever reason, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's different limitations or mental illness, like you're voicing in your introduction. Some of us may not get in that train at all, and that's the we're on.
So you mentioned Carlos. Did you say Castaneda? Did I say that right?
Yeah. He was an anthropologist, and he was named by Time magazine in the '60s as the godfather of the New Age movement. He, as an anthropology student, he went to Mexico doing some research, and he came in contact with a shaman that trained him for 13 years or so. And he wrote about that training extensively. And that, those books have been the foundation of a lot of the modern Western spiritual teaching. I mean, many well-known authors today have based their work on Carlos Castaneda's work. Really remarkable for anybody to check him out. And of course, in this program about addiction, the first couple of books, he talks about some of his journeys with medicinal plants. Eventually that evolves. I mean, so sometimes people say, "Oh, Carlos Castaneda, you get high on peyote and stuff." And my training over 20 years never involved a single substance. It was all practice and discipline and focus. So there's, if you put in the work, there's, you can get all the way in the spiritual journey without ever getting on a hallucinogenic journey.
Yeah. So for a guy like me who's in recovery, or someone out there listening who's in recovery, and has some experience with that, is there one? You said he wrote 12 different books, I think. Is there one specific that maybe you could recommend that someone might start if they were in? Because I know I'm interested in checking it out now. I'm assuming someone else out there might be too. Is there one in particular that you would recommend to start with?
Yeah, there's two. I mean, I would recommend the last one, called The Active Side of Infinity. Mm-hmm. That's the last one that he wrote, and it shows the maturity, and it shows the journey. And then there's one called the art of dreaming. The art of dreaming, and that's also in the later years, and it's a very interesting book about the power of lucid dreaming.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
So those two are the main ones, and they're not mentioning any of the substances or anything.
Got it. Okay, cool. And I'll throw some of those along with your new book that we're going to get to here in a little bit in the show notes for everyone out there listening. So let's do this, man. So you take and correct me if I'm wrong, but $600, you hop on a plane, you head over to the States to find Carlos, and what happens from there?
Well, I land on LAX with no clue where to start. Right, I'm not a big prophet, so I checked myself into a youth hostel by the airport, but I got really lucky. I mean, there was a teaching event that just happened, a few days before I arrived, and there was a lot of buzz in the city. So I went to a meeting that happened, and in that meeting, I was lucky enough to meet two of Carlos Castaneda's project apprentices. So it was a pretty straight shot for me, because from early on, I was able to be in touch with people studying with him and so on. So eventually I became I gotta say, I never met Carlos Castaneda. He died a couple of months before I arrived, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. So and eventually I became an apprentice of his colleague, a woman named Carol Tigg, who has the same training and remains my teacher to this day. So, many times the path ahead doesn't look clear. There's not a plan.
Yeah.
But there is impulse, and there is a balance. There's a balance between recklessness and boldness. So, somewhere in there, and I'm not pretend to know the difference. But I guess if you follow your heart, sooner or later, this is a net that will catch you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that was one of the things that really stood out for me with your story, was, a lot of us, I think, experience that, and we don't really know how to deal with the fact of things are kind of all over the place, and we'd like to, and I can speak for myself, like for a long time, I felt like something, it just didn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? And I had to have everything lined up, and I wasn't really going with the flow of things and having that faith that everything was going to kind of work out the way it was supposed to. And I don't know that there's, a specific formula for that. I think each person's a little bit different, but I was hoping maybe that you could kind of talk a little bit about that, about how, for you, your life, your journey has kind of evolved by, in the way I understand it, is just kind of going with the flow of things and letting things fall into place and doing the next right thing. And you've had this trajectory that ends up, leading you to starting this wolf sanctuary which I hope, we can get into a little bit about that too, because that's a great story in itself. And then, writing this book and helping just all kinds of people, through therapy and through that. So let me kind of back up a little bit. What does that look like for you? And I'll just kind of put it, and feel free to reframe it up if you need to, but as going with the flow.
Okay. So, and again, this is not, intended for replacement for any therapy or treatment.
Sure.
For me, it's a combination of two things. For me, it's a combination of presence and capacity. And I tell you what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
There are two or three moments in my life that kind of set the tone. One is when I moved to the mountains in Patagonia without knowing even how to climb or ski or anything like that, and I learned on the go. The two, when I came to the States, and third, when I started Wolf Connection, I started with the wolves, which I have no clue what I was doing, and there was something kind of driving me through. On those three moments, especially the last two, I had a conscious intention that pretty much went like this: Wolf Connection is gonna kill me, and I want to make it work. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the present. But it's both, right? So present meaning no matter what is thrown at you, you just stand and face it. And either gonna kill you or not. And if it doesn't, let's go.
Yeah.
So that's one. Capacity. When I refer to capacity, I'm referring to the it's a physical thing, but it's a combination of the physical and the emotional, where and it's a muscle that is worked and stretched, where you're able to hold your emotional reaction no matter what. No matter what is thrown at you, circumstances, adversity. Some people have a harder time, handling success and adversity. So whatever that is, sometimes success, sometimes adversity, sometimes it's things going not the way you expect, sometimes it's going perfectly the way you expect, and then you're freaking out.
Yeah.
Right? So all these different reactions, no matter what it is, having the ability in your nervous system, in your body, to circulate it, to hold it, let it bake. Because what I found at the times that I've been successful in doing that is that eventually that pressure finds a whole new gear in us that we didn't know we have. We think that we're gonna pop. I can't take it anymore, right? And then we distract, we numb out, we use substances, we get busy, humans, we are, addictions, we are addictive beings in every way. If it's not alcohol and substances, is TV and food and work and sex, and I mean, you name it. We're just and I think the foundation for me, and I'm also I've been through 12 steps myself. The foundation of recovery has to do with presence and capacity. In my humble opinion, of course, I'm not pretending to have the answer.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. I love, and thank you. I love the presence and capacity, and thanks for kind of breaking it down. I think that to your point of, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food, TV, sex, technology, whatever, we have this tendency, to want to numb out, I think. And I know I still get that sometimes. And the way I do it, I'll hop on my phone, for instance, and I can escape this reality. Maybe it's the chaos at home right now. I mentioned, a couple of kids, and, love my family to death more than anything in this world. But sometimes, you kind of want to check out. And, what is it, do you think, in your experience, that kind of stems from? Because one of the things we talk about a lot on this show is, yes, up front, a lot of us struggle with addiction, right? It's drugs, alcohol. Those are kind of the two main things that we talk about probably more or the most on here. But those are really just symptoms of the actual issues, for myself that I have never dealt with, or that I'm working on dealing with now actively through step work or through mentorship or through whatever program it may be. That's really what we have to dig down into to find out why we're wanting to check out so much. So when you got here and you started this whole new life, and you're kind of trying to figure out what you're going to do, what did that look like for you? Like, were you able to jump right in and start this practice, or did you go through some pretty hard struggles, and how'd you get through those, if so?
Okay, well, that's a packed. There's a bunch of questions in one question.
I threw a bunch of ninja stars at you real quick.
Right. You did. So I'm gonna unpack it a little bit.
Okay.
So you said it. What do you think? You asked me, what do you think it stemmed from? That need for numbing out, and we can go a whole hour on that. But I'm just gonna bullet point a few tips for your listeners. So it's if we go upstream, it's an entire cultural and social issue.
Yeah.
That mainly stems from the illusion that we are separated from the natural world, that we are not part of nature. Why do I say that? We have created a life that is overwhelming in many ways.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the definition of it. I mean, the speed and intensity and overstimulation is just the definition of the 21st century Westerners' life. So if you look at mammals in nature, they all have ways in which they will process stress and overwhelm, and many of them is some form of checkout. Prey animals will go into a numb state that they look at, they appear like dead. Predators will sleep a lot. So we have a built-in way to really process, and it's a survival skill, to really process stress and trauma. Now, the level of stimulus that we humans have created for ourselves is so overwhelming that in some cases the checkout needs to meet the challenge, right?
Yeah.
The other piece is that we took out is that we have eradicated rites of passage, initiation, and spiritual growth out of our culture, right? So we are dealing with adult, busy lives, mostly with the emotional intelligence of a child.
Yeah.
So we have a poor. No one is teaching us this. We're supposed. If you want to be an attorney, you go to school for it. If you want to, be a counselor, you go to school for it. You get your certification and so on. Nowhere in this process there is any kind of emotional intelligence training or rite of initiation in our culture. So what we find is immature, shallow individuals raising emotionally shallow individuals. So we have, emotional, teenagers raising teenagers regardless of the age, and that poor emotional intelligence or emotional, numbness has very little resources. So in a way, I believe that numbing out is a healthy response to the stimulus. Otherwise, we would blow up.
Yeah.
So numbing out is a way to, just unplug for a minute to let something in our body kind of take an exhale so we can get in the ring again. But what if our lung capacity, our stamina could be threat? Then you need to numb out less and less and less. And then eventually, back to presence and capacity, we are able to hold in our presence and our capacity. They need to numb out. They need to check out the chaos in the family, the kids running around, yelling or acting out or whatever that is. And we are able to just stand there, breathing through the acting out. And what we are doing at that point is teaching our children presence. Right? There's no way to teach it without demonstrating. Emotional intelligence is not something you read in a book.
Yeah.
Or intelligence, and mostly our mentors and our parents and our and our adult figures will either demonstrate it or not. And for the most part, we don't. We don't demonstrate to our children. So from a young age, they realize, I blow a lead, and the parents are out to lunch. No one is holding the space. And so first, scary for the kids. And second, they go, well, okay, so under pressure, check out. That's the lesson. And they've been trained as little kids. Under pressure, check out. And that's what we do as adults.
Do you think that there is a strategy, maybe, or there could be, it's possible that there could be a potential strategy to intentionally do this to a culture, to a society, to keep us in a state of disconnect from our real spiritual power that we have as individuals?
Well, I mean, now we're going into more of a social issue, and everybody will have their own opinions. Historically speaking, not only modern society, but you're looking at throughout the ages.
Yeah.
A population that is in fear and illiterate and put the power on someone else to tell them what God say or what the right thing to do is. It's a lot easier to control, and it can have a lot of benefits for a few people.
Sure.
On the other hand, to empower a population and bring, open the doors, social, financial, and so on, doors for empowerment and growth is an extremely challenging thing. How do you lead? In order to lead a population like that, you really need to, be worth your salt. And that's not what we're seeing in most of our leaders today.
Yeah, 100% agree. That's an interesting topic. I mean, that could go off on a whole another tangent, and I'd love to chat with you more about that maybe sometime, maybe another podcast or just a convo or something, because I feel like you got some good insight on that I'd love to hear about. But I really want to.
Let me give you one soundbite,
please.
and then we move on.
Please.
So the soundbite for that is that I don't think any ruling class will actually open those doors. That's why Carlos Castaneda would call it the ultimate revolution. I mean, if each of us take ownership of our own destiny and our own growth, and then I mean the tools are at our fingertips.
Yeah,
no one needs to give us permission to really create a practice for ourselves and start a spiritual journey, a spiritual education, and emotional deepening. I mean, no one needs to give us permission of that. It's just that. It's easier to complain that you really get to work.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I mean,
there's been a big movement, and I've been following it a bit, and it's very interesting to me. And I think there's a couple different names for it. The one that comes to me is the Great Awakening, right? It's the awakening of spirit inside of us. And to me, what that says is like, this reality that I thought was once real, it's really not. I'm not even sure how to articulate it other than the fact of like going to work and there's nothing wrong with grinding out and going to work and paying your bills. I get that. So that's not what I'm saying here, but that reality that we're supposed to go to work 9 to 5, work our asses off, come home, barely have a weekend. We just talked about this in service over the weekend. One of our pastors did. And you come home and you're empty. You're not living out that full passion. Like we have something in us that we know, and it's different for everybody. But like for me, I knew there was something inside of me that was burning for more, that there was something, and it's not more in a material space. It's more in a spiritual space, and what my purpose is to serve others, to get out there, to connect with people, to connect on a spiritual level. And I think that there's something missing for a lot of people out there who haven't been able to even grasp a little bit of what that looks like in their own lives. Does that make sense?
Totally. And we're going to go now to the ego or self-reflection. I mean, that's what's getting old.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really a way out. because you're describing the life of the middle class worker that very honorable in many ways.
Sure.
And we can talk about the lives of many people that own factories and companies and they're worth billions and they're equally miserable.
Mm-hmm.
So the form of our daily life has many times little to do with the what's available in our inner journey. We can find bliss and paradise on a 9 to 5, in a factory, or challenging situations, as well as a great success. The revolution of consciousness is eventually we'll realize that it's not about us.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not about us. It's not about us, because also otherwise the search for my vision and my purpose and my, you see, I mean, still my, me, myself, and I, right?
Yeah.
So that's a higher level of the trap.
Yeah.
That eventually I'm gonna find my vision and I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna find my purpose. I'm gonna live my purpose on this earth, and I'm gonna be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it's my vision, it's gonna be limited.
And that's where what you're saying is that ego can come in, that connection. And I think I want to say this too, even in light of myself, and maybe because I feel like we all have done this or do this at a certain point. I just did it. It's a human. It's almost like we're wired that way, or we are wired that way. My, me, I. We're very selfish human beings, I feel like, and I know that. Since I've been in recovery, I've started to unwind some of that stuff and try to practice and understand. And I feel like for me, it's a lifelong thing. And getting into that service, getting out of the me, what can I do for others? That's when I feel most complete. But I'd be a liar if I said that I think that all the time, because it's such a practice. It's such a hard thing to do. I'm so wired to be selfish, and so that journey of trying to unwind that, man, it takes a lot of continuous work.
Well, you're talking about the emotional maturity I was talking about before. This selfishness belongs to an early stage in development. You have a 4 or 5-year-old. I have a 4-year-old. I want to watch Curious George, and I don't care what you want to watch, right? I mean, I want the cookie. I don't want the chicken with mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
And that's right. But we remain stuck there. And then we go in, the teenager. I want to fuck this, I want whatever. I mean, that's the extent of our experience, and we remain stuck there.
Yeah. And
there's no process at a social level for moving past that. So we keep dressing it up. We begin, we bring all this new agey language about my purpose and what I want to accomplish and what I want in life. But if you really take all that fluff around out of it, you're still sounding like a 12-year-old.
That's such a good point.
Right.
Such a good point.
Right. So this, and most people, we are lucky, we're getting into this, selflessness or this greater vision later in life. Out of anybody that has been on this planet more than 70 and 80 years, there are people that you want to sit with and listen to them. And of course, we, in our society, we made the point of calling them useless and old and decrepit and whatever, and we just put them away. So the only source of, what Asian traditions call the elders and the wise people that we go out for guidance, also got been taken out of the equation. So how do we, get out of that selfishness? By maturing emotionally, and that requires. The only path I know is spiritual practice. Is whatever the practice is. I mean, there are many very worthy traditions that have been around for millennia. None of them provide a quick fix. It's not a pill. It's not a 6-week course. It's not a weekend meditation thing and then you're enlightened. It's a way of living.
Yeah.
It's a state of awareness. It's a way of, approaching our lives that is different, and that is never going to be perfect, but move us, slowly into one direction. And eventually, when we are able to really observe our emotions, observe our reactions, that brings us wisdom. And that wisdom eventually takes us a little bit away from that me, myself, and I that we're all stuck in.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm so interested in hearing more about wolves, right? I dug into it a little bit of pre-production stuff, mentioned already twice. I think I listened to your and Tripp's interview. Maybe we can start, and if this is okay with you, giving us a little bit of background about wolves in general. And then if you could maybe jump into, how you actually started the Wolf Connection, because that story is great too.
Sure. Well, so, I have pledged my life to two things. Early in life, I pledged it to raising consciousness, raising vibration on this planet. So every breath I take, every beat of my heart is dedicated to that. Later in life, I pledged it to be of service to the next generation. So my one of the main ways in which I hope to leave this planet a little better than I found it, is by serving the next generation, serving those, especially those in underserved. Wolves are the oldest animal relationship we have in nature. So now science is beginning to suggest what traditions have been talking about for millennia, which is the wolf is the first animal we've ever associated with.
Oh, wow.
Perhaps a couple of 100,000 years ago. There's a new archaeological discovery in northern England, a couple of years old, in northern England, where they found in a cave early human remains, so early Neanderthal remains, early Homo remains, and direwolf remains buried next to each other. So that discovery is 500,000 years ago. So doesn't mean that the wolf was our pet back then, but there was enough relevance in our relationship that triggered that kind of burial arrangement. So the next relationship that we have is the horse, and that's 10,000 years old. So if you look at it, and now science, the study of epigenetics and different archaeological findings are pointing to the fact that we have literally been running with wolves for hundreds of thousands of years, and that we have adopted in many ways wolf lifestyle. So we are a mammal, and we are DNA wise genetically descending from apes, but as we behave like wolves. We the way we organize socially, the way our families work, the way we take care of our young, the extended family model, those are all wolves, social organizations and social systems. And then it seems like over the millennia we have learned how to hunt, from wolves, migrate. Some of our communication techniques, body language was copied from wolves. So some scientists believe that our relationship with wolves and canines and dogs resides in our DNA level. Basically, we have a genetic memory of our long-lasting relationship with wolves.
Wow.
So my theory, what I'm proposing and I'm testing at Wolf Connection, is that when these people with heavy emotional trauma and pain come in contact in the presence of wolves, that ancestral memory, that primal memory gets activated, and that memory resides beneath all the socialized learned behavior. So all the hurt and pain and addiction and trauma and mistrust and anger and so on subsides for a moment. So the connection with the wolves is at a very primal, early stage, developmentally speaking. And that so far has been allowing us the opportunity to start anew with these young people, to get some message that they can trust and they believe in, and it's almost like a factory reset, if you might.
Yeah.
So that's why wolf. Did I know this when I started Wolf Connection? No, I did not. Again, it was a draw. I was looking for a more powerful way to engage young people. I was doing lectures in schools. I was traveling, and I didn't feel I was really making a difference. People felt inspired, but it was short-lived. Then I rescued a little wolf dog puppy. And on the search to find a playmate for my pet, I find 16 wolves and wolf dogs in a hoarder, coming from a hoarder facility that were in need of care and assistance. So I began volunteering, helping out, and until then, I still thought I was helping these animals with one hand, and with my other hand, I was still looking for a way to help young people. Until I brought those two together, until I invited a school that I had just lectured at and invited to come and meet the wolves. I didn't have any curriculum. I didn't have any process. I didn't have anything. I just have them meet. And I began witnessing the miracles. I began witnessing the heart cracking open and smiles beaming, and people that were not able to open up immediately open up, very naturally. So then I realized I had something in my hands, and I began researching. I began finding out all this information I just told you, and then I began putting it together. Began creating the bridge. That's why I call it the wolf connection. Is the connection between wolves and humans, and then the book I structured it on 9 realms. So each way, the 9 realms, I talk about the different ways in which we can refer to wolves. So many of us think of wolves and think of the animal in the wild, hunting deer, and that's very accurate. And in my book, I'm proposing that that's not the only way in which humans can relate to wolves. There is a mythological way. There is a ritualistic way. There is a human wolf bond that we can explore, and then there's a practice that I developed. It's on the last chapter of the book, I lay out a whole bunch of principles and things that people can do to connect with a wolf spirit, which is ultimately our own spirit.
Didn't, before you learned all this too, you told a friend of yours, I think I'm going to start a wolf sanctuary? And she looked at you like you were kind of crazy.
Well, right. I mean, it's crazier than that even.
Yeah.
So here's what happened. I mean, when I find these original 16 wolves, I find them at a dog rescue center that had just rescued them. So I come to try to rescue a playmate for my wolf dog, and they show me, well, I have all these ones in the back, and they come and show me those. So I began volunteering in that place, helping out with those wolf dogs. And then within 3 months, I'm actually speaking with the owner of that dog rescue. And we're talking about the weather. And suddenly these words come out of my mouth. I said, all my life, I wanted to start a wolf sanctuary. and I mean, I swear to you, that was never an intention of mine. It was a wolf sanctuary was never on my vision board, and it was never something but at that, the words came out of me with integrity, with complete honesty. I was meaning what I was saying, even though I didn't know what I was saying. This person believed me and said, "Sure, I'll help you. I'll teach you whatever what I know, and I'll help you start."
Wow.
And she did, and I never backed out of that statement. It was very interesting, and today, I only theorized that maybe an inner longing that I didn't know I have was speaking through me. Maybe this ancestral connection with the wolf was speaking through me. Maybe a higher calling was speaking through me. Maybe the actual wolf was speaking, and they were just using me as a puppet to just set me out on what they, what would be, my life work eventually. And this wolf, I gotta say, we rescue all the wolves at the ranch. They're rescued. So we have a dual purpose, not only helping people, but these animals are, illegal pets, come from fur farms and so on. So none of them come from the wild.
Yeah.
And the belief that I hold in my heart is that the wolves that end up on my sanctuary, there are other wolf sanctuaries in the country, none of which have youth programs and recovery programs attached to it. And I want to believe that the ones that come to our ranch are the ones that actually choose to become ambassadors. And if you ever come to the ranch, you'll see that they're proud. I mean, they are, in most animal rescues, you see and of course, bless their soul, I mean, they're saving these animals. But many of these animals, you see them, or you go to a county shelter and they are bored. They're like a little down, a little, without putting a human emotion, a little depressed or a little, unmotivated. And the ones on my ranch, they are ecstatic to meet you. I mean, they are jumping up and down. They're looking forward to meet a new person and do their magic. So very cool.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hike. You go on hikes, right? You go out. I mean, it's very interactive when you do have groups or visitors come out to visit the ranch, right? Right.
We have woven in a bunch of different approaches and techniques. So we use formal, psychotherapy. We use a bunch of Native American methodologies and rites of passage and Eastern traditions. So when a group comes to the ranch or anybody comes to visit, we're going to sit in silence at the beginning, and we're going to do a little council and a short meditation, and then we're going to go, to get the mindset and the energy level right to meet the wolves. Then we're going to go meet the wolves, and people will hear these transformational stories from the wolf lives, and then we're going to lay out a bunch of principles and the wolf lessons to better human life.
Yeah.
And then there will be experience. So the hiking with the wolf is part of experiencing the wolf lessons. And then there are, depending on the type of program, there are artistic expressions of the connection. So the kids that come, they write poetry, they write songs. We do murals. We build benches and tree houses, and we decorate them with wolf themes. I mean, it's a very completely experiential program.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely amazing, man. Like I gotta come down and experience this.
Please do.
I mean, it's I don't know, man. There's something that is it's very touching just to think about and even imagine, the connection there, and I have no clue. Like I don't know what it is, man, but there's a certain feeling that's there, man. So we can talk more about that, maybe later on or something. I'd love to bring my kids down even and see if, I don't know what the age group is or whatever, but what about the 12 wolf principles? Right.
So those are the wolf lessons that I was referring to. We coincidentally, 12 principles and 12 steps.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason it was 12 is because they can be practiced once a month, and they have a whole year of practice. And also our program is 8 weeks, and through the 6 weeks in between, we practice 2 principles a week. So it became 12, but I love the number. These are simple lessons from wolves to humans, written in a very, very simple language. When I wrote those lessons, those principles, I had in mind the people that we serve, and especially the young people we serve. And it's certainly the same case with people in recovery. There's an emotional and a psychological impairment when you have emotional trauma and mental illness. So big complicated concept can be sometimes understood but not emotionally grasped. And I was shooting to have a very, one sentence lesson that these the people that we serve can really hold on to.
Yeah.
For example, wolves are okay with who they are, right?
Yeah.
Simple things, but and that lesson, and then we start unpacking them, right? Because being okay with who you are doesn't mean you like who you are or where you are or what you are. It just means that you're okay. So this aims to strip our experience from all the layers of judgment. Sometimes, let's say a person is experiencing addiction, and right now the addiction is out of control. They're not able to get a handle on it. Okay, so that's reality. So being okay with that, and then of course our human, we go. So because I have an addiction, and because I can't get a handle on it, I'm a piece of shit. And because I'm useless.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I deserve to die. And then because of that, but I don't want to, right? So all these extra layers. The reality is that there's an addiction. And then I'm a piece of shit. I'm useless. I deserve to die. Those are 3 layers of horrid judgment.
Yeah.
That if you are okay with the fact that you have an addiction, basically, almost like, first step, give, turn over the wheel and admit that you're an addict.
Yeah.
And be okay with it will actually release someone from the heaviness of deserving to die, piece of shit, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, wolf let go of the past and make room for new things in their life. Any animal in nature, especially high level mammals, they have systems built in which if they experience trauma, they are able to shake it off, physically shake it off, and do some shimmering. There are videos and documentaries on this, and then able to move on, opposed to what humans do. We experience trauma and then we hold it in.
Yeah.
We get tighter. We get tighter in our muscles. We start in our heart. Our breath gets tighter. Our nervous system gets tighter. And then it's very tough to actually circulate and shake that trauma off.
We take it very personal. Whereas I guess maybe is it okay to say like a mammal or a wolf, or they don't take it personal?
Absolutely. There's a documentary. If you look at it, it's a documentary. Some people were doing a safari in Africa, and they witnessed right in front of the jeep a lion or a jaguar going after a pronghorn antelope.
Uh-huh.
And the antelope actually is grabbed by the neck, and then other animals come and kind of chase him away. So the animal is on the ground dead. Completely dead.
Yeah.
Limp.
Yeah.
And after a few seconds, you start seeing a ear twitching, and then something else twitches, and then it's able to, very with a lot of effort, sit back up, and then the entire body is convulsing, and it's shaking, and the skin, and the head, and it looks like it's having a seizure.
Yeah.
And then after a minute or two of that, takes a deep breath, stands up, and goes out trotting like nothing happened.
Wow.
Beautiful. That's incredible. That's breathtaking, because we are unable to do that. Especially as we age, playing, dancing, joking around, running and jumping, and all those things. We don't do that. Now they're silly. They are, kid stuff. We are adults. We are serious, right? So we do take it personally, and we take ourselves too seriously.
Oh yeah.
To be able to bring this kind of emotional and somatic release to our trauma, and then of course we sit down and talk about it. Which talking about it is a good step, but in my opinion, my humble opinion, the true healing is not going to come through the head. It will come through the body and through the our emotional body. So sooner or later, we're going to have to move, shake it out, walk it out, cry it out, yell it,
Yeah.
bring an expression to it that is beyond just talking about it.
One of the other principles I noticed on here that I wanted to ask you about was wolves are into being, not doing. What does that mean?
Well, that's I put a hidden practice right there in that principle. If humans, we are drawn to, our brains are drawn to movement and action. I mean, look at our movies, very, high colors, moving fast, right? So it appeals to our limbic system. So all the documentaries that you see about wolves and predators are usually focused on the hunt, on the fight, the fight between wolves, the hunt, right? Which is all the action. We are very action oriented. But if you actually go, I mean, I go with my wife and spend time with the biologists at Yellowstone National Park a few times a year, and we are observing actual wolf behavior in the wild. 80% of your time, you're watching wolves sleep.
Huh? Really?
Or and if they're not sleeping, they're sitting on a rock, just contemplating the vista and watching what the pups are doing. And and you see their ears moving if you're close enough, so they're picking up on sounds, they're picking up their nose, they're picking up on scents. So the wind is bringing the scent of some buffalo nearby and the sound of a coyote eating, and they're just contemplating the thing. And they're not hunting all the time. Actually, they hunt only as necessary, because hunting is a very dangerous activity for wolves.
Yeah.
They're hunting animals, 10, 15 times their size and their weight. And it's not a joking matter.
Yeah.
So they hunt they once or twice a week, and that's it. The rest of the time, they're walking from here to there, under the street to that rock, and then they take a nap there, and then from there they go and play a little bit, and then they sit under the tree again, and that's what you see all day.
Yeah.
So they have this ability to just be, we have become human doings, not human beings. I mean, we are defined by action, what we do, and it's very hard for us to just sit and be quiet, close your eyes, and just feel and be. So what we do with the kids at the ranch is that we go with the wolf hiking, and we hike a little bit up the mountain. Our ranch is in a very nice valley surrounded by mountains, and so we hike up a mountain and we get to an overlook or a cliff or something, and then we just sit there for sometimes 30 minutes.
Wow.
And there's nothing to do, there's nothing to say, there's nothing to think about. So we teach them techniques to just, if you have a thought, observe it and let it be taken away by the wind, and just be and watch. And then the wolf, obviously, we hike with them. The wolf is next to them, and they either doze off or they just contemplating the vista together. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's something that we most of us, even I have a very strong practice in my life, and many times I wake up and I need to jump into action, and I don't have those 15 or 20 minutes to just wake up, sit on my patio or on my couch and close my eyes and just intend the day, visualize my day, visualize myself, visualize my relationships, visualize my life in a way that I can open my eyes and then tackle it with consciousness.
Yeah. What's the age group for most of the folks who come out who are looking to work with the wolves and work on some of the trauma or addiction, or is it mostly youth? Is it all ages? What does that look like?
Well, we started at I started actually organization to serve exclusively foster youth. And then we over the last 10 years we've been expanding to a number of populations because there's so much need.
Yeah.
So we have our youth programs are based focus on prison diversion. So basically, we get kids in foster care, probation, with in drug treatment, and we give them the tools they need to basically not end up in prison.
Got it. Oh, that's
right?
awesome.
So then we have our young adult program. So 18 to 25, we serve a lot of drug recovery centers in that bracket, and we also um, serve young men and women coming out of prison.
Got it.
And then we have an adult program where we serve veterans, and then we serve lifers. So the law in California has changed over the last few years, where some people that were sentenced to life in prison and meet certain conditions, they are released on parole. So we do welcome back to society retreat. There's 3 days where these mostly men, within the first couple of weeks out of prison, they come to the ranch, and we help them. We give them like a welcome back to society kind of retreat with rites of initiation and so on. Wow. And these are men that have been in prison, some of them 30 and 40 years.
Wow. That's incredible, man. You must have a pretty extensive team, I would imagine, to be able to do that work. I mean, I imagine it's pretty intense at times.
We do. I have a leadership team that is eight people that are full time, and then I have about 20 part time people that are program employees that are seasonal, depending on how programs go in intensity. And then about 50 volunteers that are very dedicated, and they also participate, helping with the walls and different things, different programs. So,
all because your friend gave you a wolf pup.
All because my friend gave me a wolf pup. Yeah. You never know where what life is gonna be really knocking at the door.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. I have one more thing for you, and then I want to talk a little bit about the book and where we can find that at, where folks can reach out to you. One of the things that I love to do, my buddy Seth, who's a part of the show and a big part of my recovery. We've known each other a long time, and he's in recovery himself too. But one of the things we really enjoy to do is go backpacking. So we go up every year. We take a trip up to Paradise Lake up in the Sierras, and we got a couple other spots that we like to go to. And we get out a couple times each year. But
nice.
There's something, and I did, there's a couple parts to this actually. I did this as a kid growing up, right, with my grandpa. Before I started messing my life up and going down the path of addiction and all that, my grandpa used to take me as a kid backpacking. So we go up to the Marble Mountains up in the Oregon and California border up there, and we go out for a week into the wild, and we'd fish. And I mean, it was some of the best times of my life as a kid. And as I got older, I got away from that, right? And then when I got sober and I went into learning a little bit more about myself and just exploring this new life, I was able to tap back in to that time as a kid backpacking and kind of rekindle that spirit again, which was great to be able to connect and bring some of that kid out in me. And I think that was such a huge part. It is such a huge part of my recovery. But I guess what I'm getting at here is I know nature is a big part in hiking and obviously the wolves and getting outdoors. Like, how important do you think that is, and how can we encourage others to, especially whether you're in recovery or not, but especially if you are, there's something there that you can connect to by getting out into the wilderness, getting out into the trees, into nature, and there's something in our spirit that can really activate and come alive when we do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about your grandfather, and reminds me. I mean, my father did the same. He used to take me hunting when I was a kid, obviously I don't hunt anymore. I haven't hunted in 20 years or more. But but the connection with nature, sleeping in a tent, lighting up a fire and sitting around the fire in the evening, and to stay with me.
Yeah.
So this connects back to something I said earlier about the illusion that we are separated from nature. So now we need to go into nature in order to be whole.
Yeah.
So I think it's imperative for every single one of us to have some awareness of our belonging. It's not even a relationship to, but our belonging to nature. I mean, we belong. My teacher said something, that She said it when she first said she changed my life, and she said, "I'll never forget that the majority of consciousness is non-human.
Mm.
So we are the vast minority on this planet and in the cosmos, right? But we act as we own the place because we are so self-centered that we can't see really past the tip of our nose.
Yeah.
But if we really look, I mean, nature is really all around us. I mean, I'm right now here, talking to you. I'm under a tree, and there is some grass, and of course, I mean, I'm in the middle of a city right now. But instead of using, the trees and the grass as decoration, which is what we refer them to, that's an ancient living being right outside your house.
Yeah.
And the grass is like a skin, like an organism stretching through your lawn, through the park, right? And then we have insects and birds and lizards, and I mean the abundance of life is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so having I think that connection is just indicative to mental health, and to emotional health, and to I personally I can't imagine a happy life without a connection and a sense of belonging to nature.
Yeah. Me either, man. And I can't imagine for a guy, who's done 30 years of time to come out, who at one point probably thought that his life was over, that he was going to be in there forever, and ends up getting a second chance to come out and experience at the ranch, this new life in this new surroundings, nature, wolves, a second. I mean, isn't that really what, it's about is redemption. And I say that, with the fact of, I don't know why I don't even know why I feel there's certain things that I'm not sure that can be redeemed. Let's just put it that way. And I'm talking about heinous stuff here, in particular, you know what I mean? But, I feel at the same time that, people generally, deserve a second chance, and I think that, you offering that up to all ages, from men who've done time to kids in foster care, it's really an amazing thing, man. And it's really an honor to have you on the show today and share your work, man. And I just love, like you mentioned it, I think early on in this podcast and into the one I listened to on the New Man too, about, you've made it your life's mission to serve and to have an impact on the next generation. And I don't think there's anything, and I know you say that humbly and you're not just saying it. I don't think there's anything more noble and honorable to do as a man. So I thank you, man, for the work you're doing, for coming on the show. It's been a great chat. I've got to learn a lot today. I hope everyone out there listening has got to learn some stuff too. Let me give you an opportunity to kind of follow up with anything to close us out. And then please, if you could share where folks can find you at, where they can find the book at. And I have your social media links, the book link. I'll put that all in the show notes as well.
Sure. And I felt exactly like you about this sense of redemption in people in prison. I initially didn't want to serve them because I thought, if they are, if you're in prison for life, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And then I met them.
Yeah. Yep.
And then everything changed for me. I mean, they have something to offer.
Sure.
So in terms, Wolf Connection is a nonprofit. So we exist thanks to people like you, people like your listeners, people that care, that get involved, that volunteer, that make a financial contribution. We have no government support. So again, we exist thanks to private donors and foundations. So if anybody listening to this feels touched and connected to the mission, come check us out. It's wolfconnection.org, and get involved. The book just came out last week, and it's on Amazon, on Barnes and Nobles, and all the book media outlets. It's an audiobook that I heard is pretty good. I haven't heard it yet, so yeah, and pass the love. I mean, and see where it goes.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Yeah, the book, one more time, The Wolf Connection, What Wolves Can Teach Us About Being Human. Did you do the audio version, or did you have a voiceover artist do it? I'm just curious.
I read the introduction and the epilogue.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm an audio guy, man. That's probably why I'm into podcasting a lot. I always try to read. I don't know that I've ever finished a full complete book, if I'm honest, because it's not a content thing either, because there's some great books that I've started reading, but the audio version, I seem to be able to get through those a little bit easier. So I'll have to check out the audio version as well. But
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, man, and I'd love to connect again sometime, and I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you, Shane, for having me. It was a pleasure, man.
All right, man. Thanks for tuning in today. You can check us out at thatsoberguy.com. Be sure to connect with us on Instagram at realthatsoberguy, and on Twitter at Shane Raymer. Peace, love, and respect, and keep your blood clean.
I've been trying to keep my head on straight. I've been trying to keep my head on straight. I've been trying to keep my head on straight. You still say that I don't know anything about you. Oh, I don't know anything about you, but I know what you do in the back room. And you still say that I don't know anything about you. Oh, I don't know anything about you, but I know what you do in the back room.